Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Vantage webinar series. Today, as you will have seen from all of the marketing on LinkedIn, is cyber essentials essential? And that's a big question that Rob and I can't answer on our own. So I'm very pleased to be joined by Andrew Walters today. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Hi there, good afternoon.
And good afternoon, Rob.
Good afternoon.
I suppose we ought to do our traditional update of the weather in Australia. So if you just want to tell everybody what it's doing over there.
I'm pretty cold. This is a really thick fleece. There's no cloud in the sky. It's freezing. It's single digits.
Excellent. I'm very pleased to hear that, as opposed to the normal it's too hot to go outside.
It was sunny all day, though, so if that helps.
No, I'm just pleased to hear it's cold. Anyway, moving on. As people know who join us regularly, myself and Rob have been around for a while, particularly in the tender and proposal world. I will let you read the very short bios there. But for those people that don't know Andrew, and I'm sure, Andrew, a lot of your followers and colleagues have joined today just to support. This is straight off LinkedIn, so feel free to jump in and expand on any of this. But Andrew was a client partner at GoAcco, who are a provider of data analytics, cyber and AI solutions. And Andrew supports a lot of businesses and enhance their performance, security and innovation by delivering tailored and value-added solutions. So is there anything else you would like to add to that, Andrew?
No, it's a really good summary. Thank you, Matt. I couldn't have written it better myself.
Fantastic.
Yeah, ultimately, I work across public and private sector clients in the UK and farther afield, supporting them on their digital journey, really, both in terms of transformation of their current infrastructure and also looking at cyber as a focus, which is ultimately the reason we're here today.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So today's agenda, generally we split things into four areas. We've got an hour today, so we will use point 2 there largely as the meat of today. We'll just do a quick general update on cyber. There's 4 interesting things that we will bring to your attention. Then I'll hand over to you, Andrew, for about 30 minutes. You can explain to us cyber and cyber essentials plus, and probably go into the realms of ISO as well. Then we'll come back to cyber and bidding and the relationship between the two, and then we'll just quickly summarise for everybody before they go off for lunch. So hopefully that's what people were expecting. Without further ado, we will just move on to the general cyber update. So there's 4 things here. The first one, I hope that pretty much most people watching this are aware. Rob, this was something that you'd raised in terms of a point for today. So I don't know if there's any views you've got on this, but on the 19th of July, 2025 on that slide, that's interesting, a future event. 2024, obviously.
Well done.
Yeah, I've moved us into the future. Great example of how not to proofread. There was the CrowdStrike issue that apparently affected Microsoft services. I don't know if Rob, if you've got a view. No, Andrew, when we talked this through, you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Obviously, I've been expert. I mean, it affected Australia massively. I think it was one of the worst places that were affected. The airports, some government institutions. It wasn't great, and thankfully, I had flown the week before. Otherwise, I think I would have been caught up in the chaos at Melbourne Airport. So, I think I saw it cost about, and I might be wrong on this, Andrew, you know more than I do, but it was at least $10 billion worth of damage.
I think there was significant disruption globally, as mentioned. The outage, the issue took out about 8.5 million devices globally. So obviously the effect that has and the knock-on that has into business would have been huge. I mean, you've spoken about the delays on flights which were disrupted. Something which I have to mention is we're talking about this on a cyber page. That wasn't a cyber issue. As such, it was poor management of patch releasing and a software update on the CrowdStrike platform. That then had a knock-on effect and took out loads of other platforms and devices. But yeah, it was a significant issue, and things like that feed into some of the other topics which we're going to be speaking about on the next bullets within this slide. But it just shows the impact that can cause effect to organisations and their trading, just off the back of what was effectively a lack of process within an organisation.
Yeah.
I think just in terms of process, one of the things that we found preparing for this session was the National Cybersecurity Centre's blog, which there's a little link at the bottom of the slides there for people. And there was a public consultation which closed a couple of weeks ago, and the interesting bit here was that it was leading to a technical standard. And I know just before we jumped on, Andrew and I were talking about this. It sounded like it was going to be a very rigid standard. From what we'd read, the more and more we've looked into it, it looks like it's voluntary and advisory. Even so, I think probably helpful, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, AI started, I think it was 1955, the first listing of AI being used in practice. But really, particularly over the last probably 10 to 15 years, it's really moved on tremendously at pace. How we interact with AI, how AI interacts with us is really the purpose of this consultation that took place about creating a standard, as you mentioned, Matt, thank you, an advisory standard to really help organisations understand what the impact could be, how they can use it, how best to use it, and really what the considerations are going to be about both protecting your business, protecting your team members and staff, and also your clients. But more importantly, it's how to use it effectively, because if you put the wrong information in, you're going to get the wrong information out. That's a very toned down term, which some people may be able to relate to the reality. But ultimately, if you don't use the right information to create and you don't tune your AI systems, technologies that you're using, you're not going to get the right output. And that advance that you make in time saving and cost saving to your business, you'll spend having to recheck and update the systems themselves. I think AI is a fantastic development and is going to continue to develop at pace over the coming years. But you just have to make sure that the information that it's listing from is your information and it's relevant to the subject that you're talking about.
Yeah. That kind of led us on to the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which again, Rob was very proactive in finding. So that looks like it's going to the next parliamentary session. Are Parliament back yet? Must be pretty close. Next week,
yeah. So this is to essentially bring the UK up to the standards the EU have already put in. Obviously, the UK not being part of the EU anymore hasn't had to be bound by a law in the last couple of years in the EU around cybersecurity. So this law should bring the UK up to standard. It's particularly focused, or nobody's actually seen the content yet, but it's expected to be focused on protecting public services, particularly cyber attacks that have happened on the NHS in recent years.
And this just reminded me, so I was just looking to the side there because it triggered a memory of something I read earlier this week, which was on my to-do list from about 3 months ago, which was to read the PPN around improving transparency of AI in procurement. I actually got round to that this week, and interestingly, we've answered this question before on the Q&A sessions on a Wednesday, where one of the questions was, we've been asked to declare whether we've used AI in a bid. Will we be disadvantaged by saying yes? And actually, this PPN answers that. It's very clear that there will be no disadvantage to using AI in a bid. But what's really interesting, and we'll drop a link in the comments afterwards for this PPN, is that it actually gives examples of AI disclosure questions. It's only a very short document. It's 7 pages long, but it's definitely worth a read because it just gives you a bit more insight into what the government are thinking around procurement. So that was completely off topic. So we should probably come back to ISO. And I know, Andrew, this is one of the sort of core things that you support people with. So I'll just throw this one straight over to you, and you can give us a quick update on ISO.
Thank you very much. So ISO 27001. Yeah, 27001. It's the information security standard. I'm sure a lot of people watching this will know of, or potentially even certified to. So it's a globally recognized standard which differentiates it from some of the other more local content, which we'll see as part of this presentation, talking about areas such as cyber essentials. ISO 27001, as the name or title would suggest, 2013 edition is coming to end of availability, end of recognition as of October next year. That will be replaced by the new standard, which is 27001:2022. What does it mean? So anyone who's currently certified to the 2013 edition, they will have to recertify to 2022. There's been quite a large shift in terms of the build of the certification framework, or the framework itself. So as opposed to there being on the 2013 edition 114 controls across 14 domains, that will shift to 93 controls across 4 domains. What does that mean in terms of your business? It means that you will have to have a recertification, a reassessment. The way that your management framework is built and recorded will need to be changed. So it's worthwhile getting onto this sooner rather than later, because as you'll be aware, if you already certified to the ISO standard, it takes some time. There's a lot of work involved, a lot of documentation that has to be reviewed, updated, policies that have to be implemented and trained, and your staff trained upon. So it's worth getting into it sooner rather than later. But I will also add that whilst there's a significant shift in the number of controls and domains, a lot of the work that you've already done to reach the 2013 edition is still relevant. There's just some updates that will need to be made to the management framework behind the scenes.
I'm sure people will be very pleased to hear that it's not a start from scratch, but there's a decent amount of it.
It most certainly isn't, no.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, Rob, is there anything else you just want to add to that before we move on?
No, not on that. No, I mean, Andrew is by far the expert on this, so carry on.
Excellent. Well, that kind of sets Andrew up really as the sort of principal speaker for today. Obviously, you're going to talk us through Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, introduce GoACCO, obviously what you do there, how you support people. Rob and I will jump in with any questions as we go through. Hopefully, we won't stitch you up too much. There may well be questions.
Too hard.
There's quite often questions that come in through the comments from LinkedIn. So as those come through, we'll just find an appropriate time to start.
Fantastic.
So for the next sort of 30 minutes or so, Andrew, it is over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks very much, Matt and Rob. I think it's useful at this point just to provide a brief introduction to GoACCO. We're a digital services and cyber company that operate out of the UK and globally. So as an organisation, we were formed back in 2010, but have been supporting organisations across UK public and private sector since then, and also since we opened our offices within the UAE, also going back a few years now also. So as a cyber and digital transformation partner, it's important for GOACO that we stand by the levels of accreditation that we talk to organizations about. It enables us to provide valuable insight to organizations. So we are certified to ISO 27001. That was mentioned a little bit earlier on. Also 9001 and 14001, which is environmental for 14001. 9001 is a quality management standard. 27001, relevant to today's conversation, is information security. And then we are a Cyber Essentials Plus certified, and we're also an accreditation body, which is the reason that I've been invited to speak to you good people today. Thanks, Matt. Next slide, please. So hopefully a lot of people already understand what Cyber Essentials is, but going back to 2014 when it was kicked off by the National Cybersecurity Centre, Cyber Essentials is a UK government-backed standard to attest to and certify to demonstrate that you have a relative level of cybersecurity best practice implemented within your organisation. So there's 5 main controls which are looked at within the Cyber Essentials. So it's the use of a firewall, having a user access control system in place, that you've got anti-malware, previously known as antivirus, but has developed on from that over time, in place. You've got patch management processes, and that there's a secure configure on devices at the organizations. Now, first of all, this doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy loads of new technology to help secure your network. If you're using a Windows operating system, all of this capability is there out of the box, available for you to be used. It just needs to be implemented. And in terms of how do you implement those controls, that's something that you can generally follow the guidance from the NCSC or IASME website, or likewise you can speak to your cybersecurity partner to provide guidance on how to actually meet those. Cyber Essentials Stage 1, or Cyber Essentials as it's known, is a self-certification or a document that you have to complete, listing all of your policies. There's about 90 questions in there which need to be completed within your organization about how you do business, what your digital platform looks like, and how you protect data. So it just provides you with guidance and likewise a set of yes or no questions in the majority of cases that you have to answer to meet the requirements of the standard. Thanks, Matt.
So you just mentioned patch management as one of the things that's looked at here, and you also mentioned that it was a patch management issue with CrowdStrike. So yes, would this protect against a scenario like that?
Right. So the CrowdStrike issue was they released a software update or a patch on their platform. That patch had not been tested properly, it hadn't gone through the rigor of testing that it should have been through, which then had a conflict with some of the Microsoft platform. That caused the outage. Would patch management have stopped that? No. What would have, well, not a user or an end user point of view. Patch management at CrowdStrike, what should have been implemented at CrowdStrike, which I think was the omission that was made, was that the software release that they made hadn't been tested properly. So depends on which way you look at it. Patch management process, yes, but not for end users, actually for the vendor themselves.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, there we go. Next one.
So we've already mentioned about Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus being the topic for conversation today, and let's go into what's the difference between the two. Cyber Essentials, as I mentioned, looks at 5 key controls that you've got on your network or within your IT platform. Cyber Essentials Plus looks at exactly the same controls, but then in addition to that, there's manual stroke automated testing of your platform as well, to validate that, yes, you said that you've got it in place, it is actually in place and effective, and that your systems are maintained and up to date. So in terms of the time taken to complete both stages, I'd say Cyber Essentials stage 1, normally that's a week, 2 weeks, maybe up to a month to complete, dependent on how much time is spent on the completion of the exercise. Cyber Essentials Plus takes the same amount of time, but then you've got the testing, the automated manual efforts to validate that those controls were in place as well. So from an end user or an organizational point of view, the impact is relatively light, and the amount of time you as your business needs to input to the process isn't too intense, but there is some work to be done. Obviously, you can do it yourself if you would like to for the Cyber Essentials stage 1, or you can consult with a specialist partner to support you on the process, because they will know, or we will know if you choose to use GoACO, how to actually achieve it in the most economical length of time, and where to look for the relevant evidence and the information that you require to attest to and meet the requirements of the standard. It will be a lot quicker when you work with a partner, but obviously there's a cost involved in doing so.
And just on that sort of time point of view, Andrew, for the people that you've worked with, what's the quickest that someone's managed to get through Cyber Essentials and Plus?
Cyber Essentials, we've turned around in about 4 days before, from initial engagement through to them completing the application or us completing the application for the certification body. Cyber Essentials Plus, it does take a bit longer, and there's normally some toing and froing if there's issues with patching or certain areas of the network not being updated as it should have been. But you could do it within a week if you were ready for it.
Okay,
sorry, I
was
just going to say, slightly linked to that, what position should an organisation actually be in before they're going for Cyber Essentials Plus? Because obviously they're going to have to know, they're going to have some systems in place ready to go. But I'm pretty sure some organisations out there would just think, oh well, we just, if we get the right partner, we can just do it. But that's not the case necessarily, is it? There's got to be certain levels in place before you can get to that.
Yeah, that's right. Great question. Thank you. When it comes to looking at Cyber Essentials Plus, noting that to achieve Cyber Essentials Plus, you have to achieve Cyber Essentials stage 1 first, but that can be done as part of the same project. You need to have the areas that the 5 key domains which I mentioned earlier on within the presentation in place. So it's having secure access control, having a firewall, having user roles defined within the organization, and having a form of antivirus or malware protection on your network. Once you've got those, and I'll also go back to saying that all of these things are available via the Microsoft platform. So you're generally already licensed to them. You just have to turn them on. Once you've got that in place, then you can have a go at the completing the questionnaire, the documentation for the application to achieve Cyber Essentials. if you consult with a partner, they'll very often tell you whether or not you're ready to go ahead with the assessment before you press a button to submit your responses to IASME. I know from a GoACO point of view, we won't recommend an organisation moves towards it until they are in a position that they're ready to achieve the certification itself.
Okay, brilliant. Are you happy to move on to the next one, or is this one still got stuff to talk about?
I'm happy to move on to the next slide. Thank you.
There we go then.
Okay, so the difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, as I mentioned, Cyber Essentials is the questionnaire effectively that you have to complete to demonstrate that you meet the requirements of the standard, and then the plus bit, the Cyber Essentials Stage 2, requires you to have that manual / automated assessment by a Cyber Essentials certification body. That requires a review of the processes that you've got in place that we've said that you've got within Stage 1. So a vulnerability assessment of your infrastructure, a testing and review of the access controls that you've got on your network. And by us doing all of that for you, which generally takes 1 to 2 days, providing everyone's available, we'll then be able to put you forward for the Cyber Essentials Plus assessment. So there's not a huge amount more to do for Cyber Essentials Plus, but you do have to be a bit more advanced with the controls that you've got in place to meet the standard. When we're talking about adhering to Cyber Essentials Plus, it is an annual assessment that needs to take place. It's not complete it once and then forget about it. You do have to recertify, and I mean there's a number of reasons that organisations certify. So whether that's just for their own best practice at their organisation, whether it's to demonstrate to partners that their organisation is secure and you take cyber seriously, or whether it's to meet the requirements of a framework or a DPS that you're looking to bid on with organisations. So there's quite a number of reasons why organisations will go for it, and what the Cyber Essentials standard does is it enables you to do that without having to complete. I think we saw within a social bid that there were 1 to 2 pages of questions which you then didn't have to complete because you had the Cyber Essentials certification. So it's there is a slight investment in achieving the certification, but then it will save you time on multiple pieces of documentation that have to be completed when bidding for work. So there's pros and cons, obviously, from both sides. But certainly, once you've done the certification process, that's it for another year, and you haven't got to keep updating stuff like you would do with an ISO program of work or ISO certification. It's more as soon as you've completed it, that's it for 12 months.
And just in terms of the client side,
yes,
what's the time demands on them for completing this? Now, obviously, if they use someone like GoACO, you'll help them through the process, but obviously you need them at the client end to help you through that. So I'm just thinking about, often people look at these kind of things and go, I don't have the time.
I'd suggest for Cyber Essentials Stage 1 or Cyber Essentials, it would be half a day to a day of investment from the organisation that was looking to become certified. Cyber Essentials Plus, that very much depends on how many team members they've got, how many devices they've got. But for a an average size information. Obviously, what's average is very open to interpretation, but you'd probably be looking 1 to 2 days of investment of time for the assessment stage of the certification itself, where we're testing your devices using your staff's devices to actually check that the relevant updates, relevant security profiles are in place for them.
You've got traumatic memories, Rob, of those information questionnaires, particularly from the social care arena that Andrew just mentioned there. I mean, I've got this kind of vague memory of them, but I know that you had a lot more to do with it than I did. And I remember the stress levels every time I spoke to you. Can you remember roughly how long it took to go through those questions?
Well, there's a couple of things with this. One, it takes us quite a long time to do it because we're not cyber experts. So we know what should go in there in theory, but we don't necessarily know all the nuances. The other issue is, and no offence to the social care sector, but often many of these organisations are quite small and they don't necessarily know the answers either. So actually it can end up, these questionnaires can take longer than the actual bid, the normal elements of the bid themselves, take 3, 4, 5 days. I think, Matt, the one you were helping out with in particular, there was a lot of back and forth. I think that was days worth of your time and the client's time as well.
And that's just sort of reminded me of a question I was going to ask on the last slide. But particularly in that social care arena where we work with a lot of people, often their IT is outsourced, so they don't necessarily have the answers directly. And I seem to remember that was quite an issue. And I don't know if you come across that, Andrew, of outsourced IT.
Yes, definitely. So with outsourced IT, you've got a couple of considerations there which need to come in. So with some organizations, you will contract with them and they'll take all of the risk. With others, you will still effectively have full ownership of your network, and therefore the responsibility still lies with yourselves. Sometimes you'll be able to pass off a questionnaire to your supplier or MSP that's managing your network for you. In other cases, the requirement will still lie with yourselves to complete that information. So depends on the agreement that you've got and also what relationship you've got. But I think something to say is that if you do outsource your IT, more often than not, they will have completed these documents time on time again. So they will more often than not have the answers out of the box, as it were. And we'll have a pre-canned response for you across the majority of the items. So rather than trying to do it yourself, first point of call, ask them to do what they can do, and then you just fill in around the edges.
Yeah, and presumably there's no kind of workaround of using their certification for your organisation. It's organisation specific. The certification has to be attached to your organisation rather than by proxy.
That's categorically yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you use it? Not if you wanted to trade legitimately, I think would be a response.
Yeah, I only asked because there was one bit that immediately jumps to mind where I think we'd been brought in halfway through the process and very quickly discovered that Cyber Essentials was a requirement to pass the SQ, and they didn't have it. And at this stage, we hadn't met you, and we knew that you could do it so fast. So it ended up being a no bid because there wasn't the expertise to be able to turn it around fast enough. So yeah, that was a very interesting time, and there was all sorts of discussions around: is there a workaround? Can we commit to doing it afterwards? But the response was very clearly you have to have it to bid. So
I guess you're the only potential workaround that you could have used would be to go into partnership with another organisation that already had it and use them as a lead bidder.
Yeah. I can't remember the bit.
So happy to discuss that with any organisation that does need to meet any of the standards that I previously discussed.
Okay. I think we've actually got a section on the next part covering bidding and how we get around that. So I'll be quiet now and let you get on with your bit, and we can come on to that later. Fine. Are we on to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, there we go.
So the question that is often asked to us, because there is quite a difference in the cost between going for Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. In terms of the assessment process, there's not a huge amount of difference between the two. As I mentioned, it is just the physical scanning and assessment of your network and infrastructure. So it's an extra day or two on the process. But what does that actually mean to your organization, to a partner, or likewise an organization that you're trying to do business with? So they will see you as having a much greater level of cyber and information security. So their data that they share with you has a greater level of protection around it. We've touched on some cyber incidents that we've seen over the past few months, and going back to when we've seen major ransomware attacks and which all originate, or the majority originate, from a phishing attack. The amount of impact that those create on businesses is significant. I saw a case study which was written by one of the security vendors, Splunk, a couple of years ago, which estimated a cyber attack costing on average $1.2 million to organizations. And that's not about looking at the single point of recovering from an incident. That's talking about brand damage, the loss of trading time that an organization may have, and really the amount of time it takes to recover from it. I was consulting with a further education organization when the WannaCry attack came out, and that turned that organization took them offline for approximately 3 to 4 weeks until they were back to full capacity again. And it's quite surprising the impact that happens just from someone clicking a link that they shouldn't have clicked. But what this is, it's all about awareness and making sure that everyone within your team is able to look at controlling the information that they're responsible for managing, and not taking silly actions because they're rushing. So Cyber Essentials Plus, as I was saying, it demonstrates your commitment as an organization to cybersecurity, protecting the information of your business, but also those businesses that you work with and share information with. It's all about creating a safer environment for your users and partners and customers. And ultimately, it demonstrates that your business takes cyber seriously, so that if they're looking to trade with you and they've got two organizations that are there, that they'll pick the one that's got the highest level of assurance that will be provided by working with them. And that's where we're looking to do and support organizations really to improve it.
I think we're going to cover this in the next section, but just in terms of kind of hierarchy, clearly Cyber Essentials Plus trumps Cyber Essentials. Where does ISO sit? ISO
27001, I would say, is the natural next step from Cyber Essentials Plus, that is. In terms of the time that it takes to integrate the information security management system that is required to adhere to ISO 27001 or to meet the requirements of ISO 27001. That's generally a 3 to 6 month process. I'd suggest you can do it quicker, but on the many engagements that I've been involved in, the quickest that we've been able to do it was in 3 months, and that was effectively because the organisation was relatively small, straightforward. They already had very good processes in place, and they recorded their data efficiently and effectively. Once you go into a much larger, complex environment, I've been engaged with one client that was a global client that had offices dotted about all over the world, and they didn't have a standard build or set of policies and processes. So you effectively had to certify each individual global office separately because they all worked so much differently. So, as I said, 3 months for an ISO 27001 on a relatively straightforward organisation, but up to a year, 18 months, it can be for a dispersed complex organisation.
And is there anything that kind of goes beyond ISO? Is there like a super duper top of the tree accreditation you could get if you really wanted to?
Sorry, the first bit broke up, Matt.
Is there anything that goes beyond ISO?
ISO 27001 is probably the most complex UK certification you could go to. Organisations that do a lot of work in the US, whilst ISO 27001 is still relevant for them and it's recognised, they tend to attest to SOC 2 for their certifications. In terms of the two, they are relatively similar in a lot of the cases, but then the controls with SOC 2 just go off in a slightly different direction. So you can still certify to 27 and then make an allowance within the policies and processes that you implement, meaning that you can then move towards getting certified to SOC 2 as well. It's something that I have done with one client in the past. It takes a slightly different turn because you're not just focused on InfoSec, and with SOC 2 you require an independent agency to do one stage of the assessment as well, as opposed to it just being an ISO auditor.
Yeah, okay. I think my final question on this, which really kind of relates to point 3 and what you were saying previously about it's surprising what happens when somebody clicks on a link they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, what are the kind of common mistakes that people make that open an organisation up to an attack, whether that's clicking a link or sharing passwords or whatever it might be?
So within, if we look at ISO controls the majority of those areas which expose organizations to cyber attacks or phishing attacks. The most common thing that isn't used and implemented within organizations is user awareness training, because your staff are your greatest weakness. And that's not from malice or going out to cause a problem. It's because we're all busy, right? So everyone's busy. We're always rushing to do 15 things when we've only got time to do 10 in a day. And that's a sort of thing that cyber attackers actually focus on. So a phishing email, if we all had twice as much time to read every email, then you would notice the majority of them. Some of them are really, really good. Can I say good? Yeah, they are. They're authentic. And it's not until you actually dig into it that you'll notice it is something's wrong. There might be a spelling wrong. They're using a slightly different font somewhere. Something just looks too inaccurate. But what you'll notice with the vast majority of phishing emails is that they're trying to get you to do something really quickly, because if not, something bad's going to happen. So they're rushing you to pay an invoice. They're rushing you to get an email to one of your execs, and that's because they're preying on you to make mistakes by. If I don't do this quickly, something bad's going to happen, and I'm going to lose my job. User awareness training is probably the greatest opportunity for organizations to protect themselves from cyber attack. Is my suggestion.
Right, that's really interesting. So I was watching a video this morning, and it was a security consultant, and they were talking about basically doing the same thing but for security systems as you're talking about now. And their conclusion was the systems generally are quite good in terms of robustness. So what they focused on was the human element, and they would target humans because they were weak and they could get through. And for everything you've just described there, it's really interesting that is the element that lets a lot of systems down.
We always liken it to you never leave your house without shutting and locking the door. Yet with our computer systems, we very often do. So whether that's we haven't updated operating systems, half the team are sat there with a large number sat against their Windows update file because they're too busy to update their computer. Yet with that brings risk because that security update that is trying to be implemented is often to fix something which they've noticed doesn't work properly. So it's really key for users and organizations to implement updates as quickly as possible. Obviously, there's patching policies at organizations, but try and get them done as quickly as possible would be our advice.
And so does it just cover computers, or are we talking phones and any kind of device that's connected to a network?
Any digital device. I use the term computers, but ultimately a phone's a computer in a way as much as an iPad is, as much as your fridge might be. We've got all these smart devices that they're all risks within your home network. And what I was speaking to an organization yesterday, actually, one that provides physical security services. Weakest point of entry is going to be the devices that haven't been updated, haven't had any security patches. And when you look at, we also do a lot of work around operational technology. So that could be a CCTV camera, or it could be a fridge, let's say. And those devices, as they aren't technically computers, although they are computers, they don't have regular software patching. And CCTV isn't going to be considered for security patching because it's not part of your IT network. So how do you protect that access point from being the weakest point of entry or the simplest point of entry for a cyber criminal? And that's something that needs to be considered by organizations that have that type of device connected to their network.
I guess that makes things more complex as we kind of progress with technology and as you say, the number of devices connected to networks, the wearable tech, pretty much everything's connected. And I mean, generally the first thing I do when I go anywhere is I'll be looking for the Wi-Fi password or the Wi-Fi access to the building I'm in. So I guess it's a really much more complex landscape than it was maybe 5-10 years ago or even 20 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that I've seen a couple of times over the past week, where you've got all these great pictures on LinkedIn of people at their office desk. Very often you can see the Wi-Fi password and the Wi-Fi SSID name there within the pictures. And you just think, well, what impact could that have? Actually, it could have a lot of impact. The wireless SSID, you've normally got a link into the corporate network from it. So once you breach that, you're then into the next stage of what can you access, what can you take control of within that network. And the target is always going to be the crown jewels of an organization, which could be HR files. It could be sort of payroll information for the employees. So once you get in, it's how far can you get further from that. And this is something that all organizations should consider, but it never happens to us because we're too small, is quite often the comment that you get. But yeah.
So Matt, no more Instagram pictures of your office, please. For many reasons.
I mean, the amount of followers I've got on Instagram is just phenomenal. I think it might be 6 now.
I'm on 8, so I'm beating you.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, I think there's been a lot of useful information there. Is there anything else, Andrew, that you want to cover on this slide?
The only other thing which I will mention, which is mentioned talked about in the points at the bottom, as part of gaining Cyber Essentials, you do actually get free or included 25 grand's worth of cyber liability insurance. That's for organizations that meet the requirements at the bottom of that slide. Now, that's really useful for organizations. 25 grand isn't a huge amount. As I mentioned earlier, the cost of a cyber incident can go into millions. I'm not saying it will, but it can do. But that's quite often a good level of attraction to organizations, because the cost of getting that type of insurance, or that insurance, if it's not covered within other policies that your organization has, is not going to be too dissimilar to how much it will cost you to reach the certification itself. And that level can be increased, as I've experienced with one of my current clients who contacted the insurance underwriters, and they were able to upgrade the insurance.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Okay, that sort of links us nicely, and thank you for that last half an hour or so. Certainly I've learned a lot, and I thought I knew a reasonable amount about cyber essentials in the first place, so it's certainly been beneficial for me. As always, we kind of link things back to the subject of the day and to bidding, because most people that follow us are either bidders or buyers. So there's just a few things to talk through here. Rob, feel free to jump in. I know that you've sort of, this is essentially one of your things, technology, isn't it? And I've kind of rambled away, and Andrew's been very helpful. So
no, tech, but not. I was going to say defense tech. I know what I meant. Look, I've got antivirus. Anti-malware now. I always make sure I've got decent ones for that. But no,
can I just add on that? You see loads of comments from organizations around what's the best antivirus, anti-malware. This isn't. Look at Microsoft Defender first. It's included within most of your licensing. It's really worth looking at. It's used by most of the cyber organizations that I've worked at.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point, because often people think they'll need to pay for significant anti-malware these days. So yeah, Windows Defender is very strong, and as a gamer, sometimes it's almost too strong to allow me to play games with other people. But anyway, that's by the by. But Matt, I think you just about to talk about eligibility to bid, and I'll just quickly touch on social care here, which we have talked about before. This year alone, I've seen 3 very long questionnaires around information security just for social care bids. And we have seen this before in other years, but I've seen it a lot more recently. And I think this is councils being very worried about service user data going to organisations that may not have the right controls in place. So, and I think, again, we touched on this before, many social care companies are quite small. They may be very good from a care perspective and have all their CQC and everything they should around that, but they may not necessarily have the corporate controls, which would include information security that they may need to. So I think if there are any social care companies watching and you're not sure about the controls you have in place, I'd strongly consider you to look at least at Cyber Essentials. Because in many of these cases, the questionnaires don't need to be filled in if you can prove your Cyber Essentials. Not even Cyber Essentials Plus, just Cyber Essentials. So that's just worth bearing in mind.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's just worth highlighting is that in addition to Cyber Essentials and Plus and ISO, there are also sector-specific things. So you'll see on there DSPT, which is a NHS-specific data security and protection toolkit, which used to be the IG toolkit. I know there are lots of specialists out there. And I was working in the NHS when this first came out, and on first glance, it was extremely complicated, and nobody really knew what half the questions meant. It seems now that most organisations are on top of that, but there are a lot of specialists out there if people need help with that. And the CYDR was a defence one, Andrew, that I certainly couldn't think of, and you were pointing me in the right direction. But I think the point is, if there are sector-specific things you can add on to Cyber Essentials and ISO, then it's worth having those as well, particularly in terms of eligibility to bid. And Andrew, you mentioned a lot earlier on, if there's two organisations that are being compared in bid terms, if you've got another tick in the box, chances are you will score higher, which generally means that you will pick up the work. Is there anything else just around sort of sector-specific accreditation, Andrew, that you feel is worth mentioning, or have we pretty much covered it there?
I think we've covered the majority of it throughout the call today. If there, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any questions following this session, I'd be happy to jump on a call with anyone to take them and either answer or likewise research them for an organisation if they'd like support.
Yeah, great stuff. And there is a slide at the end which has got Andrew's contact details on, so don't worry, that the details are there. The thing that really interests me around all of this is the return on investment for these accreditations, which I'm sure is the question on most organisations' lips. If we don't really need it, but should we have it? And we'll address that point in the next slide. But just in terms of ROI, can you give us I know you sort of mentioned the time that it takes generally for an organisation. Mm-hmm. Could you give a sort of general average cost for Cyber Essentials and Plus, just to give people a ballpark?
Yeah, of course. So Cyber Essentials, using GoACO to get to Cyber Essentials for us to lead the assessment or application itself, you start at £310, so a very, very small amount of cash. And if you look at it from the point of view of what the cost to your business would be of 1, 2, 3 of your team members completing the documentation across a few weeks, it's not going to take you too many days to have already paid for that. Whereas we'll do the work in terms of finding the information, or certainly pointing you to where it could be within your organisation. When you're talking about Cyber Essentials Plus, that starts at £2,300 for a small organisation, ranging up to sort of 4,000 for much larger businesses. But this is all about having, should we say, a specialist helping you. And there's also, as I did mention earlier, the risk of do it yourself. It doesn't get accepted because you're not quite ready for it, or you've got some bits that haven't been completed. We will always ensure that your organisation is ready to pass before we press a button and spend your money.
And I think when I sort of hear figures like that, I always think it's going to be a lot more expensive. But, for that kind of money, the doors it opens in terms of frameworks, DPS, contracts that you might pick up, I think, well, for me, it's a no-brainer.
We'll just go back to the social care example, Matt. I mean, £310.
Yeah.
Well, the cost of you missing out on a framework, let's say you're a small company going for a framework in your home area and you miss out because you filled in the information security questionnaire incorrectly. well, if you already had Cyber Essentials, there wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. That will link us into the first question of the final slide. But just 2 points to finish off. I think data and IP security risks, that's obviously something we talked about right at the start of the process in terms of AI. So, and we've covered this in lots of webinars around using documents for large language models to learn from. And actually in that PPM, there is a little section on that and how you maintain the security of information. So as I said, I'll post that link in the comments and people can have a read of that. It's really interesting. And the final point, which I think comes back to everything we talk about when we look at bids, is evidence. And the amount of times that Rob and I bang on about collecting evidence, having an information library to draw on, everything that you generate in your accreditation, whether it's Cyber Essentials plus ISO, whatever it might be, should be stored in your bid library so that you can use that. It's great to say, yes, we've ticked the box and got the certificate, but actually some of those process flows are really helpful in explaining some of the information answers that you might need to generate. So it's not just a one stop kind of exercise. It goes all the way throughout the organization in terms of proving how good you are in managing cyber. Right, I've noticed that we are at 1 o'clock, chaps. So I'll move us on to a summary, and this is the question that I think we all want to answer: is Cyber Essentials essential? And it's a yes or no answer. So I'll start with Andrew.
No, it isn't essential. However, I can't do a yes or no. Sorry about that. It's not essential, but the time saving that it will provide to your organisation by completing that form or having someone else complete that form for you. Sorry for this term, but it makes it a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'd all agree on that, to be honest, wouldn't we?
Yeah, particularly for the amount of, even if you do it yourself, then obviously it's just internal costs. But even here in some of the costs, that GoACO charge, again, it comes back to it's a pretty simple decision because of the third point of that potential significant growth, the amount of opportunities it opens. But then onto that fourth point, how it benefits the whole organisation. And you've kind of touched on this all the way through your presentation, Andrea, around the resilience, learning and understanding. And it's that human element, the staff, that often are the weakness. And certainly clients we've worked with, you really get a sense of where policies are embedded in organisations, because you'll go and talk to somebody far removed from the bid team and they tell you exactly what they do in real life, and it is per policy, and you know then that the organisation has shared all that learning. And I think that's a really important thing, particularly for public sector contracts where, as Rob said, there's a lot of personal data flying around. We're dealing with people in most cases, we do a lot of product stuff as well, but in services, that personal information is really important.
Yeah.
And as you said all the way through, Andrew, it's that assurance to customers that you're a good organisation, that you've got the right standards and processes in place, so that there aren't going to be incidents, but you can mitigate the risks around any potential attacks. Is there anything, Andrew, that you would like to just finish with in summary?
I don't think so. I think we've talked about most of the areas throughout the presentation. If there are any questions, as I said, I'd be happy to take them either during this session, although we have run out of time for most people, I'm sure, or likewise, my contact details are on this slide. Please give me a call or send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer, and whether that's via email or jump on a call to discuss any areas or queries that you've got. But really enjoyable session. Thank you, Matt, for arranging it, and Rob, and look forward to hearing from people.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that's been really insightful, Andrew. Rob has forced me into a 5% discount for all those people that stay till the end. So there is a code there. And I have to say this through gritted teeth, but no, if anyone that stayed to the end and wants to get in touch with us, feel free to use that code and we will provide a discount for you. Rob, is there anything you would like to add in summary?
I think just as a bid writer who often goes through the pain of writing these answers, get Cyber Essentials. please.
Well, that's short and sweet. There we go. Apologies for those people that have we've gone over time by 4 minutes. I think it's been a useful session. It certainly has for me. So, Andrew, thank you for your time. Really appreciate the input, learning about all of the things that GoACO do, and particular Cyber Essentials and plus ISO and the wider range of services. So, really appreciate the time. Thank you again, Rob. No doubt I will speak to you later on. For all those that are watching, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we will see you again next month.
Thanks very much.